Playing support in Overwatch can be hard, especially if you're a newer player. Not only you need to be aware of the enemy positioning, comp, cooldowns, and a huge etc, but also your allies, how you play with them based on your comp and your win condition, how you move around the map based on the tank you have, and much more. At the same time, supports tend to have the potential to carry games by themselves due to their strong utility and versatile kits, heck, even damage and dueling too. This video will go over everything you need to know to win as a support in Overwatch, from which hero you should pick, which perks you should pick with each, positioning, team comps, cooldown management, and much more. First, let's go over what exactly is a support in Overwatch and what you're meant to do to win games. Well, it depends on a ton of factors, but generally speaking, supports are heroes who can provide high amounts of team utility and healing. They aren't the only ones, for example Soldier and Symmetra have some forms of utility, but are more selfish in nature and have strong damage and offensive tools to secure kills. Supports tend to either lack free movement or burst damage, with some exceptions of course. The way supports are able to win games is not only by saving allies, as that just prevents the enemy from winning, and ultimately doesn't create any progress for your team, but by enabling your team and setting up kills with your utility or damage. For example, an Snake is one of, if not the strongest ability in the game, due to it negating all forms of healing for 3 seconds and dealing a good amount of damage, making it one of the best tools to initiate and engage, as preventing healing in a game like Overwatch makes killing a lot easier. Other supports enable the team via boosts. The reason why Lucio and Juno are so mandatory is due to their ability to provide movement speed, which is a very versatile boost that not only provides defensive value, but offensive too. Outspeeding the enemy, not only as a melee hero, can be a great help to secure kills or pressure them. The most common mistake new players will do is healbot, and as I mentioned before, if you want to be a decisive member of your team and not just pray to get carried, you need to do more than that. Healing all the time will only get you so far. The role is called support and not healer for a reason. Since I'm going to be using these terms a lot, let's first separate and make clear the different comps in Overwatch. It won't be an in-depth guide about team comps, but here you will at least understand which heroes I'm referring to when mentioning these comps. Also, these definitions aren't set in stone, and a single hero can function in one or more of these comps based on how you play them. Dive. Dive heroes are self-sufficient high mobility characters with great target access that tend to just jump on you and try to kill you as fast as possible, preferably as a team. These heroes are usually very vulnerable when CC'd or when their burst combo is on cooldown. Heroes like Doom, D.Va, Winston, Genji, Tracer and Lucio, among others, tend to be considered dive heroes. Brawl. Brawl heroes are usually slower and close range oriented heroes with high sustain damage and sustain up close. They usually play close together slowly or not so slowly, pushing and creating pressure to secure wins. Their weakness is the reliance on set sustain and disengage abilities, since they struggle to keep up with mobility. This includes heroes like Junker Queen, Reinhardt, Reaper, Mei, etc. Poke heroes are long-range damage dealers that want to stay poking at long range, forcing cooldowns and creating a ton of pressure due to their wide angles they can cover. They usually struggle up close and have a harder time to pressure people behind shields, matrices, etc., since they can't push on their own. Here we have heroes like Hanzo, Widow, Sigma, Ashe, Iliadi, and a few others. Before a game starts, you need to choose a hero. So here I have a small summary of each one with their strengths, weaknesses, and some other important details that should guide you on your quest to pick the optimal choice or to find the main. Ana is a long-range sniper support with very high single target healing, decent damage, and some of the strongest utility in the game, with both nade and sleep being able to create kill opportunities by themselves. Nano is also a very strong ultimate that enables a ton of combos while being usable to save allies, since it also grants a huge burst of healing. Her main weakness is her lack of mobility, which makes her rather easy to dive by heroes like Winston, Genji and Tracer. This doesn't mean she's defenseless against said heroes, since nade and sleep provide decent self-peel, but it does mean you're limiting her utility as a defensive tool. She's rather simple to pick up, but her reliance on strong game sense and mechanical skill does make her a bit challenging and makes her one of the highest skill ceiling supports in the game. Ana is best in poke and brawl comps, but can also be played in dive in long maps where you will have line of sight of your allies that are diving far away. Pap is a very high damage hitscan support with good AoE healing. He has strong defensive utility and vertical mobility, which can make him somewhat hard to kill, but he has a rather big hitbox and his horizontal mobility is locked behind a major perk, so he can get dove and killed if you don't kill the enemy first. Bap excels as a selfish support able to win games by himself. If you like hitscan DPS like Soldier or Cassidy, he's one of the better choices for you. Bap is generally best in Brawl and poke comps while not being amazing in dive due to his utility having short range and his healing being a projectile with an arc that makes it harder to hit people flying and dashing around. Brig is a melee support and basically the paladin of Overwatch. Her main strength is her capability to provide safety to her fellow support or other teammates, with strong single target healing and CC limited by her short range. Brig is a very weird hero and you will struggle to play her at first, even if you are experienced with other supports, but the reward for mastering her is worth it, enabling you to be able to pick an anti-type hero on the support roster. Brig is usually played as a counter pick or meant to cover for supports with low survivability, but she can play it in almost any comp. Illari is a hitscan support with very high single target healing and good damage, while her healing is limited by her pylon and short range beam, which limits her positioning. She is also on the lower end of utility, but has strong self-peel with her outburst, and pylon provides strong movement and self-healing. Illari is best in poke comps, but can be played in other comps as she can play pretty selfishly and ignore her comp without dying on repeat. Juno is a highly mobile support and one of the few who can provide movement speed to her allies. She also has strong healing and damage, but she is very fragile and has no CC or self-healing, so you rely on her movement to survive. She is a very good support for beginners and honestly a really fun one, but if you don't like getting dove, there are better choices. Juno is best in brawl comps where her speed is invaluable, the shorter range and rather slow brawl tanks. She can also be played in poke and dive, but in poke she doesn't provide much due to her limited range, and in dive she tends to be very vulnerable. Kiriko is a well-rounded support with decent damage, healing, utility and mobility. If I would have to mention her weakness, she's somewhat reliant on gaining big value with her cleanse, so she isn't great if the enemy team has no negative effects, like Ananade, Junker Wings Bleeding, etc. She also has very high dueling and carry potential, meaning you can take the job of your DPS if needed. She's a very good support to main as she fits in almost every comp and situation, and while she's easy to pick up, she also has some mastery to her, so playing her a ton will feel rewarding. As I mentioned, she's insanely versatile, so you can play her in any comp, where she will provide decent damage for poke comps, cleanse for roll tanks, and potentially speed with perks, and good mobility and self-survivability in dive. Lifeweaver is a more defensive support with the possibility to save allies from bad situations with grip. He also enables high run access with pedal platform and has very high damage, but is inconsistent on range, so it's mostly a poke or up close tool. He is deceptively tanky too and can duel some DPS if you have your dash and life cycle for self healing, so don't be scared to get damage. Lifeweaver tends to be played as a healbot hero, but his utility goes far beyond it, and a good Lifeweaver is able to not only use his grip, but his whole kit. Despite how hated he is as a whole, he's very versatile in terms of comps. In Brawl he provides some mobility and close range damage while having decent self-sustain and an ult that is very good when people are playing together. In Poke, well, he can poke, and in Dive he can heal and save allies from far with grip and his primary. Lucio is another highly mobile support that also provides speed for his team. He's much more selfish than Juno, with his whoop and self-healing, while he also provides a strongly defensive ultimate able to counter other ults. That being said, he has very low healing, especially if single target, so he tends to have to be played with another support with high healing like Ana or Moira. He does have a very high skill ceiling and carry potential. Lucio is best in Brawl with a similar reasoning to Juno, while he's also good in dive due to his survivability and damage. Mercy is a pocket support, meaning she's best at identifying a win condition and playing around it all the time. Well, not literally all the time, but focusing on a Sojourn or Pharah that can easily win you the game is ideal. Res is also a very strong but unreliable tool, and her ult tends to sit at the lower end of power. She's mostly about damage boost and is what you should focus on if you plan to play her. Healbotting on Mercy is not ideal as her healing per second is actually quite low. Mercy is a very good support for beginners who want to focus on movement and positioning rather than mechanics. She is best in any comp where you would have set win condition DPS like Sojourn, Pharah, Echo, etc. But usually prefer more poke-oriented comps as she can be very vulnerable otherwise. Moira is a high healing support with almost no utility beyond set healing. She is usually a rather selfish support with strong dueling and survivability due to her self-healing and Fate being a great get-out-of-jail-free card. Moira is one of the easiest if not the easiest hero in the game due to her simple mechanics and rather riskless gameplay, so she's very good to start with. She's best in brawl comps since she has a rather low range and the high sustain is very valued in set comps. She's playable in other comps, but purely due to her high survivability and selfishness. Zen is a glass cannon support with low healing, big hitbox, and no mobility or sustain that is made up with his insane damage output and the best defensive ultimate in the game. Discord is one of the strongest utility tools in the game, especially in 5v5, where applying it on the enemy tank means they explode or have to sit back and make it go away. He's a very hard hero for beginners, but if you want the challenge and be able to carry games with pure aim as much as your DPS, then he's the ideal pick for you. He's usually best in poke comps or with people who can deny dives like Torb or Symmetra. Sorry for interrupting, but if you like the video, remember to leave a like and subscribe as it supports me and my channel. I'm also doing coaching, so if you're interested, send me a DM in the link on the description. Now, let's go over which perks are the best for each hero in each scenario. As a small notice, this is being recorded before Season 16 releases, so if there are minor balance changes, this could change, but I will take into consideration the leaked changes as they have been confirmed. For Ana's minor perk, Ruby will be a good choice into immobile and shieldless tanks, so basically just hold, since the slow is really big at punishing him and forcing him to play in cover. For any other tank, Biotic Bounce provides not only damage but survivability and a stronger anti-effect, which is absurdly strong. For Major, Shrike is a really good choice overall, especially as another anti-dive option, since it makes you impossible to dive while your lot is up. Hunter should only be picked into poke comps where you know you will be able to harass at range without getting doped. For Buff's minor perks, both are generally decent options and are mostly a preference and based on your playstyle, but if your team is playing closer together, Field Medicine will provide better value. For Majors, unfortunately the drawback of Assault Burst is too big to make it a worth choice. Unless you're playing very selfishly and you just want a damage option for duels, Rocket Boost is generally best as it provides Bab with horizontal mobility on a rather short cooldown, making him harder to dive and more versatile in his positioning. For Break Minors, Morale Boost is best when you need the extra sustain and you are playing into heroes like D.Va that can't block your whip shot. Barrier Restoration is a better option while you need the extra survivability or when you can play more aggressively, as the movement speed helps you catch enemies or escape, especially with your ult, since it refreshes Bash cooldown. For Major, Quick Fix is the better option overall. High burst healing makes Brig the anti-dive hero, being able to save anyone with that much single target healing available as a burst option. Whiplash is decent too, but generally worse unless you give zero fucks about your team. Then yeah, go Whiplash and kill those Genjis on your own. For Illarius Minor, both are good options and depend on your playstyle. If you play Illari to carry games and closer to a 30 DPS, then Summer Solstice is the best option, making her ult really dangerous and far more reliable. If you aren't that type of Illari or the enemy has a D.Va, which equals to her ult being useless, then Rapid Construction allows for better team support and rotations with a faster and lower cooldown pylon. For major perks, Sunburn is the best option if you're getting low, as the extra damage makes Illari very hard to deal with up close, since Outburst alone will deal a total of 95 damage by itself and it's impossible to miss. Solar Power is the best option otherwise, as the extra healing makes her incredibly strong at sustaining against poke. For Juno, as I mentioned, we do know that her perk changes, so they will be based on those. For Juno's minors, similar Vitals will be the best option if you are playing defensively and against poke heroes, where you don't need the extra survivability that reboots provide. For majors, the new perk is the best option on open maps where you can consistently hit enemies with torpedoes or your aim isn't the best. If not, take Master Blaster, which provides solid DPS and makes her dueling better since torpedoes are engraved against single targets. For Kiriko's minor, Urgent Care is the better option if you aren't playing behind your team much or you can't land kunais to save your life. Fortune Teller is a really strong perk if you are consistently proccing it, but it can be hard in some situations or comps. For majors, Shuffling is the best option with dive heroes, as it lets you TP in to save your allies that are diving while letting you get out if needed, which is something that happens a ton with heroes like Doom that like to get in and out a ton. For other comps, Foxtrot will provide a really strong burst of speed that enables tanks like Rhine or Mauga quite well, since they really like to go in fast, which is why they're usually paired with Lucio or Juno. For Lifeweaver minors, Cleansing Grasp is better if you have a tank that is weak to nade and the enemy had an Ana, For anything else, Life Cycle is one of the strongest minor perks in the game, but will make you harder to kill in every scenario, and even if you do die, you will leave a parting gift that basically full heals any non-tank hero. For majors, Super Bloom if you're against a big tank with no shield where you can reliably proc it, like Hog, Mauga or Doom, making Life Weaver's DPS skyrocket, but against other tanks, Life Weaving will provide more sustain and burst healing that will actually let you windows where you can poke the enemy at the cost of needing to use your dash for these scenarios rather than saving it for when you need to escape. For Lucio's minor perk, Bass Blowout will be the better choice overall, as Lucio's Boop is one of the best and more versatile tools, as it helps to set up kills, disengage, etc. Having some ammo while wall riding can make his DPS higher, but is very situationally useful. For majors, Noise Violation is the better one if you are playing a more supportive Lucio or your team is more spread out. If you're playing a more DPS and selfish Lucio, then Accelerando will make you really good at bursting enemies. Same as Juno, we do know about Mercy's changes, so they will be based on those. Take the rest minor perk every single time. There are very small amounts of time where you need the extra range on GA, while 100 over health while casting rest will make that ability so much more reliable, which was one of her main weaknesses. For majors, if you have two allies worth damage boosting that play together like a Sojourn plus another hitscan comp, then take Chain Boost. If you're only going to focus on one DPS, Flash Heal will be a really strong option. This is considering that it will no longer use rest cooldown to be used as it has been leaked. For Moira's minors, Uprush is generally the better option. Both minor perks provide more survivability essentially, but in different ways. While Uprush also provides more offensive application, Vanish extra duration can actually make Fade last too long, which may cause your allies to die while it's cast. Unless they provide the option to cancel it, I really go against this perk. For majors, both only affect one of your orbs, so you should pick them based on your needs. Contamination is best if you're playing her more aggressively, as it even stacks with the DPS passive, and actually granting Moira some utility. Ethical Nourishment is crazy good if you need extra healing or survivability and you're playing in a more supportive way. For Zen Minor's perk, Zenith Kick will be a more reliable peel tool for yourself against type heroes. Ascendance is niche and you have to be very creative with it, but it can provide value in some maps with multiple high rounds you can rotate around, like Numbani's first point. For majors, Focus Distraction is the better one most of the time, as it increases his lethality and damage output. Duality can be nice if you need the extra heal, but only against tank comps you can reliably hit constantly while they don't remove the discord effect, which can be very hard to find in 5v5. In 6v6, this perk is much better. One of the key aspects to improve as a support is to learn how to position. This is something that will vary depending on the hero you are playing, the enemy comp and the state of the game, but there are general tips to be better at staying alive while providing value. And that's the first tip: play to survive. This doesn't mean to sit as back as possible, as that will cause you to not be able to provide as much value as you could have, and to be isolated from your team, which makes it very easy for the enemy to catch you up off guard and kill you. You usually want to play around natural cover while being able to hold an angle and apply both healing and damage for your team. Depending on the range of the support you pick, then this position will vary. If you play Ana, you can usually afford to play further back while understanding how you can rotate around the map without getting exposed. If you play a hero like Moira, then you should play closer to your team while still being in range to reposition to safety with your Fade. That being said, some heroes like Lucio will usually want to approach differently. Yes, you can play around your team, poking in some angle, but the value of Lucio tends to come with playing around flanks and unexpected angles to pressure enemies that might be holding a high ground, for example. You don't need to do this on your own. Yes, some supports can win 1v1s, but this can be either a skill check or very risky, and a dead support is usually a lost fight to begin with. At the same time, you need to play around the range of the enemy comp. If they have a poke comp as Ana, maybe you want to hold some angles and you can be an easy pick for an enemy Widow. If you're playing against close range heroes, then you can be closer to them without being on their effective range, so your sleep and nade become much more reliable, disabling their push. Something I mentioned before is repositioning or rotations. When your position is no longer a viable choice, you should look to reposition to a safer spot. That being said, while you are rotating, you need to still be able to apply some pressure, or healing. Yes, heroes do walk slightly faster while facing forward, but you're losing a ton of potential value if you do so. If you can't hit the enemy, then they are free to do as they want, as there is no threat to their life. It is also very important that you know where you can reposition while not losing a ton of advantage and still be able to play on your optimal range. Another core aspect, as I've been mentioning over the video, is that supports have some of the strongest ability in the game, and it's not even close. Susu, Anti, Sleep, Hyper Ring are all abilities that can win games by using them at the correct moment. When is said correct moment is very game dependent, but as a general rule, first you identify where your ability will provide the most value. For example, if I'm playing Juno and I have a Reinhardt as my tank, I want to be able to use Hyper Ring offensively when it's safe for my team to push quickly and kill the enemy team, or at least pressure them off position. If I'm playing Kiriko, I know that Susu is a great answer to enemies and a nade, Junker Green ult, so you want to play around the enemy cooldowns rather than using it mindlessly. This doesn't mean you should only use them for those specific scenarios, but establishing your cooldowns usage prior to a fight will always be better. It's also important that you actually use your abilities and you don't hold them off forever. A typical mistake by new support players is to just press primary fire on some heroes and only use their abilities to save themselves. While abilities like Sleep Dart, Glide Boost and others are made with intention to stay alive, that doesn't mean you should never use them offensively. This is even worse in case of Phantom Nades, for example. If you use it just to heal yourself, you're wasting a ton of potential value and using it to do the job of health pack or just waiting, as support starts the regen faster than other roles. Another critical tip for any support player is not to only focus on your tank, or well, tanks in the case of 6v6, and to understand that your utility is as or even more important for your DPS. The obvious case here is Mercy. If you play her some amounts, you will know that damage boosting at DPS will almost always be more valuable than doing so on a tank. Now, there are some pieces of utility like speed boost that most players will only ever use to support their tank. The reality is that when you provide speed to a hero like Genji or Tracer, not only are they going to move faster, but the damage will also be amplified, as their effective range is at close range. Speed also allows them to escape with much more ease if they use their cooldowns to go in or mid-fight. This also goes the other way. If you play as Ana or Lucio or Rig, wasting your CC on the enemy tank is a very good strategy to deny them space or even kills. But the reality is you also need self CC to push away the enemy Genji. A very easy way to illustrate this is what happens if you sleep a squishy target versus a tank. Yes, hitting the tank is easier, but most of the time they have ways to survive the damage that comes afterwards. Now let's say you slept a soldier and Ashe. They are dead, as long as your team is close and they don't have stuff like Stereo Bubble or Susu. This point goes in conjunction with the next one. It is very important that you know what your other support is doing and where they are positioned. What happens in low ranks is that they both sit very closely together and tunnel vision so hard one will very well die next to each other slowly. There are two problems here. First, you usually don't want to cover the same space or angles as your other support. The point of there being two of you means you're able to spread around and create more pressure in different places at the same time. Of course, both will usually want to be able to see or be close to their team, but that doesn't mean you need to sit literally next to each other. This also causes both of you to be much easier to dive, since many heroes can punish people group trapped in a way like Dawnfist. And yes, well, being close to each other can help kill each other much more consistently. If you're up to that point, your team is probably not getting any help from either of you, and you basically lost the game on the spot, and if one of you dies, the other becomes an easy prey as you are literally next to the whole team that just dove your other support. The other important part of support is that the other support is also your responsibility. Yes, tanks tend to be better at dealing with dive heroes and mitigating damage as a whole, but Lucio and Brig can do similar jobs. Life grips can save anyone from far away, and a huge etc. Especially in 5v5 where the tank will tend to focus more on the enemy than their own team, it is very important that you take care of each other or games will become a lot harder. Lastly, we have communication, and it may seem obvious, but I can't stress how important it is in a team game like Overwatch. If you played support, you probably have games where you are getting dove and no one is even turning around to help you. And you probably typed something in chat after you died. Well, what if I tell you that that's on you? If you communicate after dying, what's the point? Your team isn't going to be spinning around watching out for flanks 24/7. It is key that you communicate in some way. If you don't like voice chat or no one is there, then at the very least ping the enemy. I highly recommend you to bind it somewhere easy for you to press while you're shooting the enemy and moving around. This doesn't apply to just getting dope. If you hit a sleep or nade a Sana for example, scream and spam the heck out of pings so your team understands what you did and can follow up. Of course, in the depths of bronze, this will likely not matter as much since it's just a mess of random stuff being thrown out everywhere, but building up the habit will do wonders for you. That's all everyone, and tell me, are you a new Overwatch player or have you played before but wanted to improve and be able to rank up faster? Has the guide helped you? I read in the comments and see you on the next video.